Global Group Australia. It is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to the launch of the second edition of the Australia India Case Compendium. We are honored today by the presence of our chief guest, His Excellency Mr. Philip Green OM, High Commissioner of Australia to India. Our guest of honor, Ms. Peter Dhillon, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India. Our special guest, Ambassador Mr. Anil Wadhwa, member of the NGG Advisory Board. Mr. Dipen Rughani, founder and CEO, Newland Global Group. Professor Rakesh Mohan Joshi, Vice Chancellor, Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, along with our distinguished faculty members, industry professionals, valued partners, and dear students. We will begin the program with the lighting of the ceremonial lamp. So, may I kindly request all the dignitaries on the stage to step forward for the lighting of the lamp, and I request the backstage team to please assist our dignitaries. Thank you. Before we proceed further, I request Dr. Preeti Tak to kindly present planters to our distinguished guests, symbolizing growth, sustainability, and enduring partnership between India and Australia. Thank you. I would now request Professor Rakesh Mohan Joshi, Vice Chancellor IIFT, to kindly felicitate our guest with a shawl. I would request Dr. Divya and our backstage team to assist Professor Joshi. I would first request Professor Joshi to felicitate His Excellency Mr. Philip Green OAM. I would request Professor Joshi to felicitate Ms. Peter Dhillon, ma'am. I would request Professor Joshi to felicitate our special guest, Ambassador Anil Vadwaji. I would also request you, sir, to felicitate Mr. Dipen Rughani. I request you also to felicitate Ms. Natasha Jha Bhaskar. So before I invite our Vice Chancellor for the welcome address, it is my privilege to briefly introduce Professor Rakesh Mohan Joshi. Professor Joshi is the Vice Chancellor of IIFT and a distinguished academician, author, and globally respected expert in international trade and policy. A gold medalist with an outstanding academic record, he is an alumnus of IIFT, Harvard University, Rajasthan University, and the National Research Institute. He is the author of the widely acclaimed books International Marketing and International Business and has served as editor of leading journals such as Foreign Trade Review and Focus WTO. With rich global exposure, Professor Joshi has worked closely with multilateral institutions, including the World Bank, Asian Development Bank, UNCTAD, and has conducted training and consultancy assignment in over 30 countries. At the national level, he has chaired several high impact committees, including those on the entry of foreign education institutions into India and the BIA standards on online consumer reviews. He also serves on the Management Council of the All India Management Association, IMA. In recognition of his lifetime contribution to economic research and public policy, Professor Joshi was conferred the Atal Bihari Vajpayee Award in 2022. A highly sought after speaker, policy advisor, and thought leader, Professor Joshi continues to play a pivotal role in shaping India's global trade and education landscape. May I now invite Professor Rakesh Mohan Joshi, Vice Chancellor IFT, to kindly deliver the welcome address. Sir.
Thank you so much, Arunima. Distinguished guest on the dais, our chief guest, Excellency Philip, our guest of honor, Madam Peter Dhiloji, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Commerce, Ambassador Anil Vadhwa ji, Ambassador Amit Dasgupta ji, Pradeep Mehta ji, Deepen ji, and so many distinguished guests, and very importantly, Natasha, who has been instrumental, and along with Dr. Preeti, that we could shed light of the day today. Distinguished guests, my colleagues, and students. It's a matter of indeed great satisfaction and pride that an initiative we took over a 1.5 years back, that we could bring out, this compendium of the case studies, although the work was going on in the background, but, I compliment the entire team who worked so hard under very active involvement of Natasha and Preeti, so that over 30 students of IFT were involved, 30-40 students were involved, about a dozen to half a dozen faculty, and they work very hard in lot of interaction, collecting secondary data, interacting with these data, and then a lot of stakeholders, the case studies what have come. And as you are aware that India and Australia are very key partners. We have come a very long way. We are democratic countries with a very independent, judiciary. India is less than half the size of Australia in terms of the area, but in terms of population, we are 54 times more than Australia. And therefore, the sustaining India is very, very challenging. And despite limited resources, India has demonstrated to the whole earth that our economy, with somewhere between 6.6 or 7.2, whatever the data is, fastest growing large dynamic economy on the earth. When the world growth rate is 2%, 3%, US growth rate is 2.2%. Australia, I don't want to tell, but it is generally less than 2%. But Indian economy is growing at 6.6. And this is what I think, we need to learn. The whole world need to learn from India is demonstrating and transforming challenges into opportunities, and we have demonstrated. India, Australia, ECTA that we signed, Economic and Cooperation and the Trade Agreement on 2nd of April 2022, operationalized in December 2022, and from 1st of this January 2026, all Indian products, almost 100% are duty free in Australia. And similarly, it's a big market access for the Australian farms. Market access to Australian farm of a market, fastest growing market, the market with the 1.46 billion people, and an economy which is probably economy of the future. In 2026, forget about the long, India in economy is going to contribute to 70% of the world growth, wherein America is going to contribute only 9%. So it is the market where everybody is focusing on. And as Ambassador was saying that we are in the turbulent times, most turbulent times than ever before, and therefore most of you are WTO is almost if I don't say dysfunctional, this dispute settlement body is dysfunctional. Otherwise, the multilateralism is facing a very challenging time today. And therefore, countries are coming up with plurilateral and bilateral agreements. In terms of the bilateral agreements, we have demonstrated that after the problem started, uncertainty, and uncertainty is very certain in time to come. India, we signed an FTA with UK, we signed an FTA with Oman, and we are very happy to have, Madam Peter Dhillo, she has been the chief negotiator of the India-New Zealand FTA, signed in a record time of 9 months. After that, I think we signed mother of all agreements. India signed is 27 countries negotiating was very difficult, and probably it was the most complex, comprehensive agreement signed by India and even by UK. Australia, we already signed. Anyway, I wrote that time, a lot of in the papers that it's a win-win deal, and you know how it is win-win deal. And success demonstrates success, and therefore we signed. And you are aware that we also signed agreement, or reached at a deal with the largest economy on the earth. Australia is very important for India because I think who knows better than you that over 900 thousand people of the Indian origin. People in Australia, they have contributed a lot to the wealth of Australia. People in Australia have helped taking out the Australian business abroad. And Deepenji, thank you so much for being part of this. I'm highly, grateful and thankful to Mr. Deepen for this stewarding, for taking leadership of this initiative. Time is short, but we'll talk later when I come. But I think thank you so much for being in IFT, and credit again, goes to Natasha, because she reached us and we came out, having a collaboration. Anybody can have collaboration, you can sign an MOU, but this is where we have demonstrated, and I'm highly grateful to various persons, include especially Shri Mukund, who have helped us, in in getting data and getting us in touch with the various companies. I also thank all those companies for whom we have written these case studies, who have interacted with us, who have interacted my faculty, my team, my students, and we could do this. And I wish that this center will strengthen. We wrote about Australia. We'll also take more things to New Zealand, UAE, and maybe much more countries. So I think it was the first thing, case study compendium which we came out of the center. Thank you so much. Namaskar and welcome to all of you in IFT. Have a nice day.
Thank you, sir. Let me now introduce the founder and CEO, Newland Global Group, Mr. Dipen Rughani. Mr. Rughani is a leading authority on Australia-India economic engagement with nearly 3 decades of experience at the intersection of trade, investment, and public policy. He is the founder and CEO of Newland Global Group, Australia's foremost bilateral advisory firm, advising governments, corporates, and institutions on market entry, policy alignment, and cross-border execution across the Indo-Pacific. A graduate of the Australian Institute of Company Directors, he is widely recognized for aligning commercial strategy with geopolitical and regulatory realities. Under his leadership, NGG has enabled over 300 enterprises from ASX and NSE listed companies to high growth SMEs to successfully enter and scale across the Australia India corridor. A frequent speaker at global forums, Mr. Rughani is equally committed to social impact through his leadership of Anupam Mission Australia, supporting healthcare, education, and inclusion initiatives in underserved communities. With deep institutional trust, boardroom credibility, and cross-cultural fluency, Dipen Rughani continues to play a pivotal role in shaping Australia-India economic and strategy engagement. Mr. Rughani, I now invite you to share your opening remarks. Sir.
Thank you for that wonderful intro. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us. I'd like to acknowledge a few dignitaries that are here with us today. His Excellency Philip Grimm, OAM, Australian High Commissioner to India, Ms. Petal Dillon, Joint Secretary for Ministry of Commerce, welcome. Mr. Pradeep Mehta, Secretary General for CUTS, Ambassador Anil Wadhwa, Ambassador Amit Das Gupta, great friend of ours, Mukund Murthy, who's the Minister Commercial General Manager and Head of Austrade South Asia, and Dr. Priti Clark. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's an exciting moment for Australia-India relations. It's a privilege to welcome you all here for the India launch of the second edition of the Australia-India Business Case Study Compendium, titled Pitch Perfect, Australia-India Perfect Conditions for a 100 Billion Partnership. The compendium marks the culmination of 18 months of rigorous work, a project that's involved a deeply structured 33-question research framework, one-on-one interviews with participating companies, extensive primary research through corporate disclosure, financial data, and trade flows. Extensive secondary research across government policy, sector reports, bilateral economic data sets. In our opinion, and we've been in this sector for quite a long time, this is without exaggeration the most comprehensive evidence-based business literacy document ever produced between Australia and India. Our partnership with this compendium would not exist without the extraordinary support of the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, which is under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Their intellectual rigor, policy alignment, and academic discipline has shaped this publication into a strategic resource that speaks to business, government, and industry alike. I'd also like to acknowledge the featured companies, of which there are 30, our institutional, strategic partners, and ecosystem collaborators, which are also another 30, across both nations. Their contributions have strengthened the sectorial depth of this edition, which spans across technology, innovation, trade, market entry, advanced manufacturing, and energy transition. And of course, I'd like to acknowledge my NGG team, especially our project director, Natasha Jabaska, whose leadership, research discipline, and commitment has driven this compendium from concept to completion. We also have Rayan and Harsh here, somewhere in the room. Where are you guys? These guys have done a lot of analytical work for us as well, and they're based in Delhi. So thanks, gents. Why is this edition important, and why does it matter? Uh, Over the past few years, we've witnessed the extraordinary shift in the Australia-India economic relationship, and this compendium captures this shift with clarity and precision. Key findings, I'll just mention a few key findings. Two-way trade surged 43% in 2024, reaching $49.1 billion. At a current rate, the 100 billion milestone could arrive before 2030. Post the Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement, the ECTA, entrants recorded 3.8 times faster traction in export growth compared to pre-ECTA. Over 70% of the companies surveyed identified the AI-ECTA as a decisive turning point for market entry. 92% of companies featured now operate in both markets, which is demonstrating that the aspiration is now becoming a reality. For every $1 million of exports, approximately 6.25 new jobs are created. So there's some really wonderful data here that has come out of this research. It's worthwhile really having a look at. I guess that these results are not theoretical. They're real measurable indicators of fast evolving economic relationships. We grappled with the name of this compendium, and we thought we'd pick, with the help of the Consul General in Sydney, Dr. Janaki Raman, we came up with the idea of pitch perfect. It's an analogy, and the name pitch perfect was drawn from the sports that ties both of our nations together, which is cricket. The batter's performance is shaped by the pitch, its bounce, its pace, its predictability. When the pitch is well prepared, the game opens up. Shots become stronger, risks become smarter, and strategy becomes clearer. So the same applies to business. This compendium provides the conditions, the insights, and the signals that allow Australian and Indian companies to read the pitch and play the long innings. It identifies the sectors growing fastest, the states driving industrial transformation, the policy levers shaping market access, and on-the-ground realities companies must navigate. It's a map, a benchmark, and a guide to build on evidence. One of the clearest messages emerging from this research, High Commissioner, is the importance of concluding the Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement, the CECA. The AI-ECTA has been a catalyst, and the CECA will be the structural anchor. CECA will lock in certainty, reduce long-term risk, deepen services and investment integration, and elevate the corridor to a strategic, not just a transactional partnership. The data shows that the momentum is already here. CECA will amplify it and accelerate the path to a $100 billion trade by 2030. The 30 companies featured in this edition are divided across 4 key themes that includes trade and market access, technology and innovation, energy transition, and advanced manufacturing. These companies represent diversity of thinking, resilience of strategy, and ambition that fuels bilateral growth. Their stories reveal how innovation travels between our markets, how Indian states are becoming more global manufacturing hubs, how Australian companies are scaling faster through India's digital and talent ecosystems, how energy transition is driving new forms of cooperation, and how universities, global capability centers, and corporates are shaping knowledge flows. These are just not isolated success stories. They're signposts for what is possible. As we launch this edition here in Delhi, I want to emphasize a couple of important messages. One is that this compendium is only the beginning of a much larger journey. Secondly, as mentioned by Professor Joshi, there are a number of trade agreements that have currently been signed by India. Now, they're still to be ratified. They've been signed. With the Australian ECTA, it was signed in April 2022, but was ratified and came into effect in December 2022. What we've got here is a evidence-based story of companies that are already operating in new India, in contemporary India. So we still have an advantage from an Australian perspective to take advantage of the ECTA and as we talk about the CECA going forward. So there is a definitive advantage for us still to take advantage of. What we have created is it's not just a publication. It's a living blueprint of the next phase of the India-Australia economic relationship, a partnership built on evidence, guided by policy, strengthened by institutions, and driven by businesses that have the courage to take the first step. To everyone here, thank you for your continued leadership, your trust, and your commitment to shaping the India-Australia corridor. On behalf of Newland Global Group, I'm honored to officially launch the second edition of the Australia-India Business Case Study Compendium, titled Pitch Perfect, Australia-India Perfect Conditions for a $100 billion Partnership. On that note, I'd like to invite some dignitaries to officially launch the compendium. Do we have the books available? Okay. Yes. So can I call to the stage the dignitaries that are already here, but also Mukund, if you'd like to come up, and Ambassador Dasgupta, if you'd like to come up, please, as well. Is Pradeep here? Okay. No.
Thank you, sir, for that insightful introduction of the compendium and launching the compendium. I now have the honor of introducing our guest of honor, Ms. Petal Dhillon. Joint Secretary, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India. Fatal Dhillon ma'am has over a 2 decade of career in civil services in India, spanning the multilateral and government sectors. She is an IITS officer of 2002 batch. Ma'am has spearheaded key initiatives in infrastructure, investments, debt financing, and strategic partnerships with a strong focus on global and local governance. Ma'am has represented India internationally at G20, United Nations, BRICS, FATF, and OECD. She was advisor to the executive director at the International Monetary Fund, Washington, D.C., representing India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Bhutan. Her notable roles in Government of India include Director of Multilateral and Bilateral Economic Cooperation in the Department of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance, and Executive Director Business Development in Ministry of Railways, bringing expertise in financial markets, public-private partnership, supply chain, and digitalization. Ma'am has successfully led complex cross-regional projects in infrastructure, health, and climate change. Before joining civil services, ma'am worked for 6 years with the corporate sector in the multinational consulting firm at Arthur Anderson in business advisory. She is a chartered accountant and a master's in public policy from Harvard University and a graduate in economics from Miranda House, Delhi University. Ma'am, I now request you to kindly deliver the special address.
Thank you so much. His Excellency, the Queen, Ambassador Wadhwa, Professor Joshi, Natasha, and Dipen, and all the distinguished guests and students who are gathered here. A very good morning to you. It's a pleasure to launch Pitch Perfect. I finally have it in my hands. I've been waiting for it. And a collaborative initiative of the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade and the Newland Global Group, devoted to deepening the India-Australia economic engagement. At a time of global uncertainty around the world, India has consistently emerged as the fastest growing large economy in the world under the visionary leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi. India's economic enterprise, rooted in our democratic ethos, is shaping the architecture of global trade around the world. And here, our free trade agreements are delivering the critical economic thrust. Over 3 years ago, December 2022, is when we all started regarding our FTA with Australia. The India-Australia Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement, as it is called, and I have to give you this anecdote, is from the Indian side based on the word ekta, which is the unity at its core. Unity is what modern trade now knows, needs, and must achieve between our nations. Unity of purpose, partnership and growth, and of shared prosperity for the next generation. I'm here today and I'd like to mention that our Commerce Secretary, Rajesh Agrawal, was supposed to come. He couldn't. So on his behalf, I am commending IIFT and under Professor Joshi's leadership for anchoring this initiative. IIFT today for us stands as a knowledge asset in India's trade ecosystem, and it is nurturing students to become future economic and business leaders, not only in India, but also globally. Pitch Perfect is a compendium of case studies of business collaboration between India and Australia, a knowledge that speaks simultaneously to policymakers like us, to industry leaders, and to the classrooms. I want to extend a special thanks to the Newland Global Group, Dipen, Natasha, and your entire team wherever they are scattered in the world. This is a great initiative, and as we were talking before we stepped in here, I hope you can carry this forward to the other frontiers where we have it would be a very helpful exercise. The India-Australia Business Case Studies Compendium has actually brought alive stories of many companies. It offers a very interesting read and a very diverse set of fields are being covered from healthcare, technology, education, logistics, critical minerals, and even gaming and robotics have been successfully brought together. The cases illustrate the market entry strategies and the innovation which has been done to make sure that the model works across the two countries. We read about the company's background, what motivated them to do what they did in the partner market, the growth strategy which was adopted, which has been very different for different companies, and most of us, most of all for us, people like us, it leaves us with lessons as to what we need to do going forward. Key insights have emerged on the strategic localization, the innovation followed, the product adaptations to meet the local market needs, and the effective use of policy and the ecosystem enablers. I'm quite sure that beyond India and Australia, other countries will also seek inspiration from it. And it serves as a perfect guiding resource for many in the audience here and beyond. The India-Australia partnership is, of course, at the heart of this venture. And we may be competitors on the cricket field, but here we are fully collaborating in every way under our FTA and under our economic partnership. When I was going through the compendium on the computer and on the internet, which is where I read it, it's interesting that ECTA has actually been cited as a turning point for delivering the advantages and greater investor confidence across, and having a smoother market entry. And I hope it continues to do that because our partnership is essentially of complementarity on both sides of our talents, of our resources, our technology, our innovation. And this compendium captures that convergence brilliantly. And it brings out the value that comes from having FTAs. Equally important are the insights, as I mentioned, that it has left us with. Issues which have, still are the friction points. And from our perspective, we take this as a guidance for moving ahead on skill mobility, innovation, mutual recognition of many of our standards in the next phase of our collaboration, which is SECA. Pitch Perfect has illustrated through this compendium that trade agreements can be leveraged, and what matters is practice. Agreements have to move beyond into the real world and actually deliver. Pitch Perfect has given us very good cases in that direction and left us with the thought that yes, the pitch is ready, it is well formed, and it is scoring. So as we move ahead, we both together, that is India and Australia, will need to go higher. With that, I want to congratulate the enablers of the study, the collaborators of the study, and the students. I'm told there were 40 students from IIFT who participated. So congratulations to all of you and to Australia, and we'll keep this great partnership and collaboration going. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for the remarks and valuable direction. I now have the honor of introducing our guest of honor, our chief guest, His Excellency Philip Green, OM, High Commissioner of Australia. High Commissioner Philip Green is a highly distinguished Australian diplomat with experience on 4 continents, having served as ambassador or high commissioner to Germany, Singapore, South Africa, and Kenya. High Commissioner Green's distinguished career includes several notable contributions, including overseeing the implementation of Australia Indo-Pacific strategy following its launch in 2017, leading the development of Australia's policy on the Quad between 2017 and 2019, and playing a pivotal role in concluding the enhanced strategic partnership with Germany, as well as the Australia-Germany Hydrogen Accord in 2021. Earlier in his career, he was instrumental in the conclusion of Australia's comprehensive strategic partnership with Singapore in 2016, along with the upgrade of the Australia-Singapore Free Trade Agreement in the same year. Mr. Green was Prime Minister Kevin Rudd's international advisor between 2009 and 2010 and Chief to Staff to Foreign Minister Rudd between 2010 and 2012. He led the Secretariat for the Review of Australian Intelligence Agency 2004. Mr. Green was awarded the Order of Australia Medal for his role in the response to the Bali terrorist tragedy in 2002. He is a graduate of the University of Sydney in Arts and Law. He holds honorary degrees from James Cook University and Mudrock University. Your Excellency, I now invite you to kindly deliver the inaugural address. Sir.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Namaskar, and from me, Yumulundi. Yumulundi is the word in the language of the indigenous people from around our capital, Canberra, which means hello and welcome. And in greeting you in this way, I'm demonstrating our respect for indigenous people in my country, in this country, and all around the world. Thank you, Professor Mohan, Vice-Chancellor, for your warm welcome and your thoughtful remarks this morning. To you, my colleague, Petal Dillon, on the other side of the negotiating table for SICA, this is a very warm moment to celebrate our success in the past, to think about the next phase and where we are going. To you, Dipin Ragani, and your group, including Natasha Jarbaska, thank you and congratulations for the second edition of this very valuable work. My old partner in crime, Ambassador Anil Wadhwa, who has played such a huge role in the development of economic links between Australia and India. It's super to have you here, as well as Amit Dasgupta. Thank you very much for joining us. And may I say finally, but importantly, today in the audience we have our own head of the Australian Trade Commission for the whole of South Asia, Mukund Narayanamurthy. It's a special week for us in the High Commission because every year on Australia Day, 26th of January, the same day as Republic Day in India, on that day every year, our Governor-General issues national awards. And Mukund was the recipient this year of Australia's Public Service Medal. Congratulations, Mukund, and thank you for your work. Professor Mohan, you began by saying that we live in turbulent times, an era of disruption, a time when the global order is uncertain. I guess my key message to you today is, in this era of unprecedented uncertainty, there is at least one thing that we can be clear about. And that is that Australia and India are bound together in a partnership that will only grow and grow. We in Australia present ourselves to the region, and in particular to India, as a reliable partner. When other things are shifting around us, we were amongst the first country to realize the significance of India's growth to a leading partner in global affairs. That's why we had a first phase free trade agreement only a few years ago. And we continue on that pathway as a reliable and dependable partner for India. Now, for me, there are three underlying reasons why Australia has that posture. The first is that we are strategically aligned. We live together in the Indo-Pacific, an era, a field of great opportunity and economic prosperity, but one which could be upset by conflict and instability. And our prime ministers have set a goal of working together on a vision to keep our region stable and secure so that we can live in prosperity. The second reason why I believe that Australia-India ties will only grow is that, yes, of course, India's economy is growing, as others have said. We recognize that, and every economy in the world will appreciate that. But Australia is special for India because we're a neighbor, we're strategically aligned, and because our economies are highly complementary. We produce very few of the things that India produces in the mass market. And India produces very few of the things that we produce. Our economies are harmonic. The things that we are good at, energy, resources, including critical minerals, skills and training, which India needs for the vast number of young people who need to be part of this growing economy, and high innovation, which can be globalized and scaled through India. That is the nature of the complementary character between our two economies. And the final thing, the third thing that is driving us together ineluctably is what Prime Minister Modi calls the human bridge. The now 1 million people, more than 1 million people of Indian origin who call Australia home. Now, I'm conscious to the Indians in the audience that 1 million people might not sound like many. Let me assure you, 1 million people is a lot of people in Australia. It's the fastest growing group in Australia. And it's doing great things for our society, but also for our bilateral relationship. So bilateral trade is benefiting from this strong engagement between us. It's also benefiting from the success of ECTA. Let me remind you that as of the 1st of January this year, tariffs for all goods produced in India entering Australia are zero. No exceptions. No exceptions, no asterisks, no fine print. Everything produced in India now enters Australia tariff and duty-free. And Indian exporters are taking advantage of this hugely. So if you look at the last 5 years of India's exports, you find that India's exports to the world in the last 5 years have grown by 40%. That sounds good, right? But Indian exports to Australia in the same period have grown 200%, 5 times the rate at which Indian exporters are growing to the world. So Indian exporters, and that means jobs and profits right here in India, are benefiting hugely from our economic complementarity and from our free trade agreement. Let me give you a couple of examples. Over the last 3 years, automobile exports from Australia to India up 288%. Electronics up 100%. Agricultural goods up 35%. Apparel exports up 20%. So India is benefiting hugely, and Australia is too. We're capturing much more of our fair share of India's growth. We calculate that Australian exports to India, excluding coal, are growing 4 to 5 times faster than India's exports to the rest of from the rest of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in a very good place, but we are not done yet. Our Prime Minister, in March of last year, launched one international economic report. He didn't launch a roadmap for Australia-EU relations, although those are good. He didn't launch a roadmap for Australia-Japan economic relations, although that goes very well too. He launched a roadmap for Australia-India economic relationship, identifying 4 sectors above all others which had huge potential: green energy, agriculture, tourism, and education. In all of these fields and many more, our relationship is bound to succeed. As Ms. Dillon said, now is the time for us to focus on the next phase of our partnership, which will be the seeker to implement a comprehensive agreement. And we are now up and negotiating directly to upgrade IIFT into that sort of comprehensive agreement, which will unlock even more trade and investment. So at the macro level, the situation is very good. But this Newland report gives us specific case studies and on-the-ground experience of what it is like and how companies are succeeding in their partnership between India and Australia. Let me give you a couple of examples. So the report tells us about sun pure extracts. So Sunpure is a Ghaziabad company making wellness products from biological extracts. It's part of the huge and growing Indian industry in wellness products. They saw in ECTA and the removal of tariffs on herbal extracts to look for Australia as a market. Now, they've partnered with an Australian firm that can help them navigate the regulatory requirements of the Australian system. And as a result, their exports to Australia have grown 10 times in just 3 years. On the Australian side, I want to talk about a firm called Inquit. I engaged just last month with their CEO, Logan Mullaney, who's had huge growth in his product in the last 5 years in the United States and is now looking at India as a major market. So what does Inquit do? They produce specialized steel forms for making bridges quickly, cost effectively, and including in very complicated and challenging environments. Their work is based on 130 patents that they hold in 60 countries. They have developed a partnership with Tata Steel to bring their innovation to India and help this country develop in its massive search for new and more effective infrastructure. Already, they have built more than 200 bridges, which brings me to my final point. We are all in the business of building bridges. And to you, Dipin, this volume today is a further bridge that we are building between Australia and India. We were an early mover in our engagement with the India economy. We see that a number of others are following suit. It's a good thing. Competition is always good. But as I said at the start, we remain committed to the Indian economy, and the Australian government is determined to ensure that we make best advantage of our complementary skills. Now, I have to admit that I got one part of your report wrong. So you tell me today that Pitch Perfect is about cricket. Fine by me. I thought it was about singing because we think about perfect pitch. We think about being in tune with each other. We think about singing harmonically. We think about our great soloists, Prime Minister Albanese and Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, who are bringing forth a beautiful song. All of us could sing along with the chorus. I invite you to join the song. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable remarks on India-Australia bilateral trade, the synergy and the untapped opportunities. With this, we come to the end of the first segment of the event. We will take a brief pause. Peter ma'am has pre-engagement, so she would now take leave. Thank you, well. Thank you for taking our time. So I request all the dignitaries on the stage to please take your seat off stage. And I would request Mr. Tasha Jhabhaskar to start the panel discussion. Thank you and namaskar.
Thanks very much, Arunima. It'll take a while for us to start with the panel because before that, we are very keen to show you key findings of the report. But before that, namaskar, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us today. Well, every day in India, banking, communications, logistics, education, agriculture, infrastructure systems operating on Australian capability, often invisibly, but at national scale. So let me give you a few examples. Core banking software originally developed in Sydney by FNS and later deployed across Indian banks through SBI and TCS remains one of the most widely implemented banking platforms in the country. India's early mobile networks were shaped with deep technical input from Telstra, one of the first multinational telecom companies to establish network engineering and innovation centers in Bengaluru, Pune, and Hyderabad. Farmers across Indian irrigation districts are optimizing limited water resources using smart water management technologies from Rubicon Water. Students in metros as well as Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities access global education pathways through IDP education, which has grown from a single presence in Delhi office in 1995 to a presence across 60 Indian cities. Complex supply chains in India are supported by logistics and warehousing platforms built by Linfox, while India's technology ecosystem benefits from sustained R&D investment by Atlassian, and the long-term infrastructure assets across transport, energy, and utilities have attracted patient capital from Macquarie Group. Now, why this is important, that these are the success stories that clearly showcases how Australian companies have benefited in the India market. And these are not pilot projects or short-term market plays. Australia's strengths are already embedded in India's growth story. For more than 2 decades, Australian companies have brought world-class capabilities in these sectors and had made it work at scale. Education remains one of the key sectors, and I'm glad that Ravi Lochin from Global Reach is joining us today as well, has played a major role in education sector. And what's important is that Australian companies have not done so by chasing volume. They export what Australia does best. For many of you, it's important to understand. I know that generally there's a huge market perception around Australia that's a small market, the numbers are small. Let's understand the value proposition, what Australia offers. Australia, what it does best is regulatory discipline, operational rigor, trusted institutions, and long-term capital. These case studies show Australian capability in action, tested in India, refined through complexity, and proven globally. Now, companies today are not short of opportunity. What they are selective about is where success actually compounds. So that is why the Australia-India corridor actually matters. Australia is not a volume market. It is a credibility market, one where compliance, governance, product quality, and delivery discipline are non-negotiable. Now, what this compendium shows is that companies succeed across this corridor, not by treating these markets as opposites, but by understanding how different systems reward different forms of discipline. Across the 30 companies and 30 partners in the Australia-India corridor, we only ask for one thing: tell us the truth. What worked, what stalled, and what nearly failed? And what would you do differently if you were starting again? Once insight that came through consistently, that companies don't fail across the corridor because markets are hostile. They fail because they move too early with too little structure. Success is hundreds of disciplined micro decisions made early, made deliberately, and often under imperfect conditions. This compendium captures those decisions, not the polished versions, but the lived one. So companies on both sides of the corridor can move with clarity and build positions that last. This compendium also stands on the work of my extraordinary team, for which I'm extremely grateful. Rian Demel, our project execution specialist, Harsh Sahai, our market analyst based in Delhi, the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade research team led by an outstanding group of management scholars under the focused guidance of Professor Preeti Tak and Arunima, and the leadership of Vice Chancellor Professor Joshi. The analytics team at Fornax. I see Pratmesh joining us from Fornax team for distilling and validating company data that all ensured depth and rigor. And most importantly, the challenge that our CEO took of entrusting us with this project and backing us and giving us the autonomy to run this at full speed. Now, with that, let's turn to the work itself. A quick snapshot of the Australia-India case studies, business case studies compendium. What are the key insights that we should be aware of? So the first one around scope and method. Each case study is built on detailed questionnaires, primary interviews, and verified secondary research. The cases are structured consistently across 4 dimensions: context and opportunity, strategy and execution, impact and results, and lessons and insight. And it includes 30 companies operating in the themes of trade and market access, advanced manufacturing, energy transition, and technology and innovation. Each theme is also supported by a thematic primer to understand where each sector and theme stands for Australia and India. So you'll get an understanding of where Australia stands in advanced manufacturing and where India stands in advanced manufacturing, and similarly for other specific themes in tech and innovation. And I also must acknowledge the the key partners for each themes. For tech and innovation, we have NASSCOM and Tech Council of Australia as our partners. For advanced manufacturing, we have Advanced Manufacturing Growth Centre and ACMA, the Automotive Components Manufacturing Association, Export Council of Australia, and FIO as our partners for trade and market access, and Smart Energy Council and Powering Australia as our partners for energy transition. This edition is also the most collaborative we have ever produced. It brings together 30 partners and reaches more than 400,000 businesses through their networks and channels, industry channels. And since the inaugural 2023 edition, this particular project has engaged 56 companies and senior leaders across both nations, building a longitudinal view of what has changed between 2023 and 2025, and what really defines success in this corridor, how to enter, how to scale, and succeed in the corridor. Now, if you look at the key insights that's coming out of this particular report, when you put the data together, a very clear story emerges. IIFT has been a genuine catalyst. 70% of the companies say it reduced tariffs, it eased mobility, and accelerated post-pandemic growth. Two-way trade has grown from 43% to $49.1 billion, and exporters are scaling faster, with new companies growing at 3.8x and average firms growing 24% annually. Companies are gaining traction 25 to 30% faster, supported by redesigned operating models that include 92% now running joint operations and nearly 80% using hybrid onshore offshore delivery. The economic impact is tangible. Every $1 million in exports is creating over 6.25 jobs. So looking at the target of $100 billion trade target by 2030, we need 12.6% of annual growth, and the data shows this is well within reach. If we look at the next slide, what are the key business models emerging in this particular corridor? Across the 30 companies, 4 business models dominate. Partnership models, so joint ventures, co-manufacturing and licensing, which is allowing companies to combine technology, IP, and market access. The second model is around direct subsidiaries, giving companies full operation control and a long-term local footprint. Some choose acquisitions for instant scale, while others used distributors for fast and low-friction market entry. And increasingly, we are seeing a hybrid and licensing-led model, so IP created in Australia, delivery in India, and local sales teams driving growth. High Commissioner mentioned about InQuick, and InQuick is one of these examples, IP created in Australia, and then partnering with Tata Steel, creating that manufacturing process in India. Now, what really are the growth hotspots in the corridor? Australia's exports to India and the export strengths meeting India's fastest growing demand curves. This matrix maps every major export category against two things: how deeply Australia is already present in the Indian market and how much growth potential still exists. So in the top left, we have the star opportunities. These are sectors where India's demand is rising sharply, but Australia is not yet fully present. So think lithium, hydrogen, processed foods, organic foods, baby food, packaging materials, water treatment technology. So this is where the first movers will define the market. On the top right are the growth champions, areas where Australia is already strong, and India's demand continues to scale. So education, tourism, wool, cotton, iron ore, aluminum oxide, premium FMCG. The opportunity here is to innovate, protect share, and deepen collaboration. Bottom left is the potential opportunities. Emerging areas include biotech, precision medtech, aerospace components, defense equipment, 3D printing, quantum components, smart city solutions. These will need selective investment, testing, and the right partners to build demand. And bottom right is the mature market: crude oil, LNG, coking oil, established categories where the goal is efficiency and diversification. So taken together, this matrix gives us a very clear picture. Australia is well placed, but the frontier opportunities now sit in high growth, low penetration sectors that align with India's next decade of industrial expansion. The second view helps us to see not just the categories themselves, but the shift in India's demand category. So when you overlay market penetration with growth potential, 3 patterns are constantly becoming clear. First, India's consumption story is no longer only about commodities. We are seeing rapid acceleration in categories like cosmetics, personal care, specialty foods, wellness products, and lightweight advanced materials. These are high-value, brand-driven segments where Australia can scale quickly. Second is technology-enabled exports are becoming mainstream. Water tech, environmental monitoring systems, med tech, composites, aerospace components. These are sectors where India is actively looking for global partners with trust, capability, and quality. Australian companies fit naturally into that gap. And third, the next wave is going to be knowledge intensive: genomics, life science tools, quantum tech components, and carbon capture materials. These won't be high volume immediately, but they're high strategic value and position Australia inside India's long-term innovation build out. So when we look at this matrix, the message is very simple. The Australia-India export story is becoming more diversified, more specialized, and more future-focused, moving from traditional strengths to next generation industries. And this is where corridor is heading. Now, considering this is the second edition of the compendium, it was important for us to draw a comparison where the companies were in 2024 and where they are in 2026. So we did a longitudinal analysis to see how the corridor today, and it looks very different from 2023. Companies are now entering with longer-term strategies, using India for R&D, technology transfer, and talent capabilities. Localization has deepened, not just for products, but in leadership, culture, and decision-making. Execution has become digital first, with mobile interfaces, UPI integration, WhatsApp support, and cloud systems designed for Indian users. AI ECTA is being used more intelligently, from tariff planning to rules of origin, optimization, and mobility pathways for service teams. And importantly, companies have a higher risk appetite, deploying capital earlier and with greater confidence in the corridor's growth trajectory. We thank our partners who collaborated with us to bring this project to life, and the executives who have joined today's launch from the featured companies, including Zoho, Tanshu Australia, Auto Ingress, Circular Seed, Hexaware, HCL Tech, Sunpure Extracts, FBE India, Wipro, Persistent Systems, Space Machines Company, Energy Exemplar, Power Ledger, Adverb, Canva. We also acknowledge the presence of trade commissioners and distinguished attendees from federal and state governments and industry. Now, across the 30 companies and 30 partners, the stories were different, but the lesson was really consistent. Cross-border success is rarely about ambition, it is about judgment. Judgment about when to move, when to pause, and when to let local teams lead. Judgment about partners chosen for capability, not convenience, and judgment about building credibility before chasing scale. So interactions categorically showed us the challenges, the chaotic nature of engagement, and how it is important to build the capacity and the capabilities in these companies. So in response, we have decided to create a platform designed to help SMEs and larger companies navigate this complexity by strengthening judgment, sequencing decisions, and intervening before commitments are made. A platform created to solve the decision problem that sits between ambition and execution. We are calling this the advantage network. The patterns that we are constantly seeing is in the case studies compendium that across sectors and markets, the same issues came up again. Organizations were not short of ambition, but they were unclear which stakeholders actually mattered. Generic market assumptions were applied in a highly regional market like India. Funding pathways were unclear. Regulatory complexity surfaced late, and many organizations lacked the internal capacity translate policy or trade settings into action. So understanding of how the trade agreement actually translates itself into tangible gains. What really goes wrong? So what typically happens next is predictable. Partners are brought in too early, pilots begin before readiness exists, and execution accelerates before risk is properly understood. So what exactly is the real problem? That's why we were very clear about one thing, that expansion into complex markets is not a networking problem, it is a decision problem. Conversations need context, relationships need sequence, and execution needs readiness. What's missing for many organizations is a structured environment to pause, to test before commitment, to interrogate risk before execution, and to decide whether and how to move before momentum takes over. Without this, decisions are driven by pace, pressure, and rather than judgment. The advantage network, what the advantage network is, it's built to address this gap. It is a decision-grade intelligence and access platform designed to intervene before commitments are made. It puts structure before action, judgment before engagement, and access behind readiness. It is about designing well. Who it is for? The network is built for decision-accountable organizations operating in complex markets where capital is at risk, reputation matters, and reversibility is limited. How it is structured? Structurally, it is simple. There are three layers created to address the needs. First is intelligence to establish clarity, relationships to be sequenced deliberately, and access only where readiness is established. The purpose of this exercise is that companies are not doing random networking. It's very targeted, and companies have an understanding of who to engage with. What to do next? Having worked for many years at the intersection of policy, industry, and execution across these corridor, this pattern repeats very often. And the right next step for us is to really explore it. And we would request people in the room to scan this QR, go and check for yourself what exactly is Advantage Network. If you're interested to join this network, it's an invitation only, but companies are most welcome to share their details, talk about the challenges that they are facing. And if it resonates with you, please register your interest and we'll take it from there. That's the Advantage Network. On that note, I'm delighted to now transition to panel, where you will hear directly from the leaders who are part of the companies featured in this compendium, but also who have very closely seen what really happens in the Australia and the India market. May I now request the panelists to join us on the panel. Mukund Narayan Murthy, Head of South Asia at Australian Trade and Investment Commission, who has recently been awarded the Public Service Medal by the Government of Australia in recognition of his outstanding contribution to public service. Mukund brings rare depth to his role with extensive experience across Southeast Asia and now South Asia. He has a front row view of how companies engage across Australia, across very different regional markets. Mukund, please. Gino Nadar, Global Mission Engineering Lead, Space Machines Company. Space Machines SMC is Australia's orbital servicing leader, operating a hub and spoke model where India provides R&D, component manufacturing, and a supply chain of over 250 transitioned ISRO-grade vendors. Their flagship Space Met-3 mission will launch on India's SSLV in 2026 this year with a 450 kg Optimus spacecraft, the largest Australian-designed satellite ever built. Gino. Sagari Chatterjee, India's education lead from Canva. Canva is one of Australia's most successful global tech company, and India has become central to how it designs tests and skills for the world. Founded in Sydney, Canva is now used by over 260 million monthly users globally, including 95% of the Fortune 500. India is its fourth largest and fastest growing market, where Canva has built deep in-country teams to localize language, templates, pricing, and AI-enabled product features for a mobile-first multilingual user base. Innovations here in India are now shaping Canva's global product strategy. Sumit Joshi is the head of business excellence Adverb. Adverb Technologies is one of India's leading advanced robotics and warehouse automation companies. It was founded in 2016. Adverb employs over 900 specialists and delivers AI-enabled robots, automated storage systems, and warehouse software to more than 300 clients globally. Operating one of the world's largest mobile robot manufacturing facilities, and with active operations across the US, Europe, and Australia, Adverb represents a new generation of Indian industrial technology companies, engineering-led, globally competitive, and built to perform in high standards markets. So the purpose of the conversation today is to understand from these companies, also from Australia, how they guide the companies to venture in India and Australia markets, but the experience of the companies, what they have done, what they have achieved, what are the pain points, and what they would advise to their peers. So I'll start with you. I'll start with you, Mukund. Possibly we start with the role of Australia and how Australia helps companies navigate the market. And what has been your experience since the signing of AI and the execution of AI? What has really changed in the market in your opinion?
Sure. Thanks for that. Congratulations to you, and for Thanks, Natasha. Congratulations to you and to your foreign community. The event in Canada was a success. It's great with my colleagues, Andrew Pye is our training data, which I'm responsible for investment, and Nathan Davis is our investment division responsible for affairs and business. So, Natasha, I want to present the response. We're really breaking down through key areas. The first is the criticality of demand creation. There is no day where I say our formal rings, there is a natural demand and interest to expand offshore. It has to be cultivated. And it is cultivated as a result of a lot of effort on the part of not just Australia, but our partners in ecosystem back in Australia, who have to really provide a sense to Australian businesses of why India should be, as you said, an informed choice for them. But as I often say, it's part of a highly tested global opportunity set for them. So Australia's largest investment partner is the US. Australia's largest trading partner is China. Southeast Asia is a major Australian government priority. We've just signed a trade agreement with the Middle East. Australian companies have a tremendous amount of choice, in addition to being exceptionally successful in Australia and in adjacent markets such as New Zealand. So it's a lot about competition in India. And there's tremendous competition in Australia for the attention of the Australian company. So the first thing that we do is really demand creation. It takes a lot of time and effort to secure the interest of Australian companies to look at opportunities in India. We do that broken down by sectors. And so in the last 12 months, it's been fantastic to see how we've successfully been able to work with 1,200 Australian companies. That was just 300 to 400 about 3 or 4 years ago. So 1,200 now. Australian companies across agribusiness, food, consumer, across defense, advanced manufacturing, space, across technology, education, and across the green economy. To really come to India and look at opportunities and there is strategic domains in this market. And so we then, for example, the partner country, all 12 months, has Indian energy storage. Let's get energy companies to India to participate and enable their team with that. We were the partner country in Bangalore, so very, very and we also, as you know, this week, we have 16 Australian institutions here participating at the QS Summit and participating at honestly QS Summit. It was quite extraordinary. Programs that we made as a result of it. Just one example. This is an educator, and we've had tremendous success in this school of consumer, which is really new to the but it's not three programs yet. We have 140,000 Indian students studying in Australia. That's grown 10-fold since the early 2000s. I was in a panel with a group of high commissioners from Europe, and they were speaking in the low principles. And they were very, very. We have 140,000. There were examples in the tens of transnational education partners. We had 450 transnational education partners involving in Australian university partners, joint groups, PhD programs, PhD. It's tremendous there. So a lot of effort goes and through those missions to raise awareness. And we do that with our partners, so the Business Council of Australia, with the Industry Chamber of Commerce here, the Tech Council, and with all of our bodies. So speaking, I just want to say very quickly, once you create that demand level about interest, you have to convert it to very targeted services, much like your network marketing. Australia has a very focused 9-box matrix for delivery of marketing advice, connections to customers, and then regulatory support. And this is the core work that colleagues such as Nathan and others who are trying to focus difference really every single day. So when Nathan was leading our economy team, in the last 12 months, he had 300 companies just in clean energy, sustainable mining, circular economy, and infrastructure who were looking to close transactions, right? And so that is part of the demand satisfaction, but ultimately you've got to create value. So the success we've seen on paper is that if you go back a few years and depend on the numbers really well, it's going to change on two-way trading relationship is something about 30 billion for a very long time. It's crossed 50 billion, that's not 52 billion. And one of the reasons for that is because, yes, we've been in trade points, yes, we've been able to deliver good services, but we've been able to ensure that we've been able to work closely with companies to realize opportunities in international outcomes. That's why it's called 53 billion. So tremendous amount of success over the last 3 years, that it's a result of really 25 years of effort of mission to get companies understanding the opportunity.
Thanks for that. Is clearly also the connection the panel was with the top in terms of the interactions with the companies and the companies hearing what they have to say about the ecosystem of business involved, and Australia and state governments and federal agencies have played in making it happen for them. Over to you, Gino. We had Roger who joined us and he's sitting on the Compendium and he's really looking forward to the state that's here with the show this year. Let's build on space missions happening for the audience here. I mean, what exactly are the inspirations? What led to this India opportunity? What was core strategies to create it small?
So, Space Machines is an Australian headquartered space technology company which is working in space servicing and satellite detection and sustainability. So, we develop and operate satellites and spacecrafts which are highly maneuverable. They are capable to inspect, service, protect satellites across orbits. Our main focus is to make space operations resilient by responding to threats or risks in matter of hours rather than months. Now, talking about why we entered India. So, India, because when we entered India, we saw this huge potential and the space ecosystem was booming. And around that time, in 2020, 2021, India's space reforms made it clear that private claims have been broadly tested. And around that time, we saw a strong alignment of a long-term vision of sustainable space operations. So, and of course, Rajat, he has strong ties with India. And this benefited him to realize that India can provide easy access to high quality engineering talent and capable supply chain. So these factors made India an actual strategic choice for us.
Thanks, Gino. I'm really glad that the Australian company is making its mark in the Indian space market. Sumit, I think it's a very interesting case study for us. You were featured in our first edition and the success that that you have received in the Australian market, and of course you're trying to do more in the ANZ market. Tell us a bit about AdWorks in your operations. It's massive. We know the number of global clients you have. For the audience about the company and what exactly are your aspirations in the Australian market? What led to that venture?
So let me first paint a picture about what AdWorks is. You already mentioned that there is a warehouse automation. So if you ever bought during the Amazon big billion sale or the big year sale, chances are your funds would have passed to an AdWorks warehouse solution. Okay? If you bought banks, you bought mangoes, coconut oil, coconut on Maggi, or Turkish pasta. Chances are your packet. The local grocers from who bought it, the fast food is about to an adoption. If you own or an entry buy and you're sitting for minutes, the chances are the spare part will have one store in an adult solution. If you have ever been contact to chances are now that December robot. So that's the kind of automation you need. In Australia, if you have bought Adidas sportswear or footwear, Australia is using it. There's a 100% chance that that parcel will have been stored sometime within 2.5 hours. If you ever bought online on my website, my reviews, chances are your parcel would have passed through our solution. So that's the kind of work we're doing. What happens to go to Australia? Actually, we started slowing down, and this was a little later in 2020. So Australia was always a preferred geography, after obviously US. What actually looking was to Australia, the need of the customer there, because the manual fossil labor was extremely common. They were regulated safety compliances, which was stringent. And now, this COVID pandemic is really opened up the automation worldwide. For that, what is the sweet spot in customer to experiment with a startup from the get. That was our first step in Australia. You calling yourself a startup? We are kind of a startup. We think like a startup, but we are a global company. Yes, it is a global company, and it's very humble about it. Last month, Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited your robotics facility in Noida. No, that was only where Chief Minister. That's for management. We always ask is how much of this is made in China, how much of this is made in India. So let's take a is the component. The growth to deliver increase that component going forward. Of course, of course. School of strictness also are working with people. We have skills for execution and applications across the world. Manufacturing facility friendly. There's a people now needed. Sure, sure. We have contracts, we have we say design, making it affordable, especially the range of partnership models that we are looking at now. Somebody these are big terms of the marketing statement, all these canvas in your story.
Right, I think the best way to bring this is that the presentation that you just saw some time back was actually built on Canva. But I actually thought only specifically about Canva activation. Canva education currently has around 3 million monthly activations. We work with over 25,000 school systems. We have a national MOU with NCRT. We will be Consumer Minister of Education. We have 6 MOUs with state education departments, and we're about to sign a few more. It's very obvious move for an Australian company like Canva to come to India. The national education policy coming to force. The national education policy talks about the need for activity and skill-based learning, and Canva education actually brings just that. We are working very, very closely with the government system to ensure that our platform is 100% curriculum aligned. Every subject, every play that is taught, and the child opens the book and sees those topics and then opens it on Canva, they see the exact topic. We are actually working very, very closely with a few publishing houses to also implement QR codes in the textbook so that they can scan those QR codes and retrieve it and send to Canva. Farmers' World journey has just begun. And I think an Australian company which has the global standards already set blends in very well in India because India has that scale and that intent that Canva is trying on right now.
I correct me if I'm wrong, but we also say that it can be for strategy to design in your plan.
That is true. That is true. We have a tagline as well that built to design up, which means that everything that you built in India stays in India and then eventually reaches the masses.
So now, moving with the hostage vantage point, we get to the execution risks. Where companies do believe most often misjudge execution risk, regulation, partnering, standards, that what in your opinion are the key core issues which companies must be aware of as they execute?
I'll focus my comments on Australian companies entering the Indian market. But if anyone has an interest on those very same questions of Indian companies entering the Australian market, any parts of excellence must be entered. So, and companies to support them in the Australian market. So, there are a number of points here that happen, and I'll focus on 3 key points. From an execution perspective, there are 2 that come perhaps the most. The first is pricing. Pricing is the number one thing. It's the biggest transition for Australian companies to make when they bring their products and services to the Indian market. It's not even price to Australia is a low volume, high margin market, and our companies are highly profitable. And so, especially get driving high margin strategies that are based on differentiation and quality. Quality is still the trick here, of course, in India, but it has to be done at scale. And you have to really, therefore, revisit your pricing proposition. It's probably the hardest transition that Australian companies have to make. The second key one in execution is really assessing counterparts. You put up these business models and they have to be spot on and work through our sectors of work. You'll see a good critical mass of all four of those business models. So the counterparty risk, whether it is a distributor or a customer for your product service, or whether it is a joint venture partner, the level of commercial due diligence that Australian companies do come into the market, is varied. And so what we have to do at Australia is always try and reduce that variability to ensure that they work with us, right? So we have 85 people plus feature, and over 90% of our team are exceptional locally engaged colleagues. So I've got like Rahul here, mostly investment team, but like Rahul, we have a very large group of exceptional individuals who come from the private sector, who understand Australian capability, understand the Indian regulatory system, have regulations for customers, and therefore can help assess the risk of counterparts. Australian companies, they don't use us. So that's partly on us, so we have to raise awareness on where to help them. But also Australian companies are saying that you should have great confidence. Come to us, because we can't help you, we will help. And if we can't help you, we'll tell you who can help. Right? So there's humility, I think, that we plan on having what we do. I think the second thing is regulatory. And in terms of regulatory, it's one thing to speak about HECTA, but it's another thing, depending upon the category, for instance, in our potential to do for administrative perspective. It's one thing you always says to me, it's one thing to think that you know of the process itself from a customer's perspective, it's another thing to actually know what it is. You've got to go through the process to be honest, to actually know it's customers. And then obviously these things count. So, we have about 150 Australian companies that have physical presence in India, which is a very good thing broken across sectors. Many it's innovation centers, R&D centers, and it's a bit of a myth that India has obviously a lot of talent, engineers and engineers guys, and that's great, but it's great demand. Okay, so Australian companies started to compete to actually attract that talent. So if you go to Bangalore, yes, we have about 30 global capability and innovation centers there, but those centers are competing with US brands and European brands, depending upon the area of work that's being undertaken, especially because of the, product engineering, the software engineering, the data systems, the AI, is incredibly hard to attract and non-retain talent. So the talent strategy for India requires a lot of work. It isn't as simple as that there is a lot of talent. It is very hard.
So, okay, that's a great point. In fact, that is key motivators for us to really collaborate with the institution like the University of Waterloo that is marked as the top, I think, the number one MBA college in the country. Takes a lot of time like this, and only guys, qualities like this was what for them to understand what exactly are the expectations of school institutions or training employers because in the market it's very different there, but that's going to be easy for us to do this. Now, you follow someone from Caesar, and the story, this is easy, so what can be done to really making this market done? Any partnerships, any pivots that you have to take to make sure that you have this forward?
So one of the key challenges that we faced was export controls while working across India and Australia. So sharing of data, knowledge on engineering work across countries requires a lot of planning. And in the beginning, we underestimated as to how much collaboration we require to get export controls. But however, we mitigated this by engaging with partners, making sure that these challenges are included in our work. Now, once that was done, it became smoother for us. So export controls was one of the biggest challenges for us.
For you, so in Australia, what are some of the key challenges that you are facing in the market? And you feel that you can
I think the biggest challenge we face when we still face is the perception that Indian farms are not high quality. We've been there for around 5-6 years now, and we're not relying on European brands, then can we do that? the others becomes. That's not the second we have to bring, and I think, that's the problem. When interacting with the agency or the Australia and stuff. What we did was, we had a good quality management system in place, which governed the way we have products or send our products and install them and commission them. The process and system was there. Quality management runs on two things. One is that quality is always the journey to the destination. So once you reach the goal, you take up is higher than that. And our management believe and all the senior leaders believe that the bottleneck is always at the top. So they keep thinking how can we go differently, how can they empower the team down to take the right decision in terms of quality and the right decisions for the customers. I think each philosophy is the one of the way we have handled our product quality and the way we handle our interaction with customers. This still continues to be one of the concern that we really have to go up and
That's very interesting. It's something about what you want to be implemented. We always talk about relative programs. You know how companies have done in other countries and how they're in Australia. Now, if you were to explain how to establish yourself in European markets and American markets, because it's typically established the product quality in the market and where you fall in everything. How long have you said? Is this true? Yes, it's opinion. Is this true?
yeah.
So that's a lot as well, or it's very essential to
Just to have. Also, the buying decision of companies outside India and Japan. We are a very company, so there has to be a decision making unit. Multiple people are involved in taking the decision. This is a habits that happen. Multiple people are involved. So who are the key influencers, who are the people, who are the decision makers, who are the parties that understanding we should have. And that's where a company like yours can help companies and let's say in Australia to understand how the decision of the wise behavior of consumers. And that will really help a company go along with in terms of reducing the sales cycle. And our sales cycle in 6 months to 1.5 years before we get the product. Meet the customer multiple times, design the effect multiple times before they get the customers support in the budget order. So the cycle time can reduce to know the time behavior before we get the market. Also, our hit rate can improve. So, talking to 15 customers or say 10 customers, our hit rate is one. If you don't know the time behavior, but if you know the time behavior first, you can convert more customers, more prospects. I think that is an important aspect in the entire market. We are making also the.
These are the big challenges we also came across in Compendium partners and research, and that's really key purpose for us to launch a partnership with platform also to address some of the key issues. Sadly, Canada is very big, but it's not happening for you all. So what are some of the market challenges that you have to go through, and you would what are the things to be done?
I think the biggest challenge, especially for medtech company like Emma, is the fact that we have to deal with the digital divide. Digital literacy currently in India is around 56% as per the Press Information Bureau's report. Which means that there are a lot of folks who are serious and understand what digital learning means. That's one thing. Or three is the fact that internet connectivity, Tampa works best when you have internet. And there has also been a very big factor. The rural government is extremely stark. 61% of urban population have internet access and 25% of rural population have internet access. So in a situation like that, how do you, work and ensure that they're not just, catering to the private school systems, but we also ensure that public school systems also benefit from Canva. So the best way to work is a partner and execution. So we have a global partnership with Google. We work very, very closely with Google, and the moment we work within the state education department, we also ensure that we at Google or in some state education departments, like we could recently signed an MOU with the British government last week, where Microsoft is very good, they already set their place there. So we could put on Microsoft and let them that, hey, we have signed a partnership with this education department, would you want to help us set the ecosystem? So we want to put the other, we are not just working in the edtech sphere, we're also setting the boundary ecosystem that the students or other edtech companies will benefit from.
Excellent. So, you have to think about it, what's sort of view, as an Australian company, what is the biggest misconception you see companies need to drop about India?
I think one misperception is that India is actually not a product market, it is a policy-led market. We have to align with the policies, the government core policies, the national narratives, if we want to survive and sustain in India. We have done the same. We have aligned with the national education policy, the skill development policies. More than hopefully in one way that is very different from how you see it in Indonesia or Philippines or even in Australia. So the way that education works in India is very limiting. That's one. And secondly, with Canva Pro and Canva different versions of licensing, we also noticed that India is a very price sensitive market. It's price sensitive market and also the fact that what they aim for, they look at the impact as well as the outcome. So we had changed and more the entire pricing model when we entered India. So advisory, suggestions is that when working with India, you will have to, prioritize the fact that you have to ensure that you get the trust of the system will not be about speed.
So, thanks, Albert. Well, if you have to think about yourself, to be Australian, what is it that makes it absolutely your this?
Straight to the world, you can do large complex projects, you can design, manufacture, install and commission and deliver that multiple companies. In fact, right now, in Mumbai, India's first humanoid. So you will probably see on LinkedIn and other social media how we launched it. We have gone outside the way to see, actually launched a portfolio in friends. The humanoid comes to it. We have a robotic arm which is used for welding, assisting plates and various applications. So we've gone outside the warehouse and we do a factory. So that's something to look out for from my works.
Thanks, Sumit. And this mission for your expansion into Australia. Do you want also you any practical advice companies that in your sector maybe?
So one practical advice is to secure a local partner early on in the market and you're entering. Local in partners, they help with the processes, operational realities. And there are companies who are related to this institution. And there are few companies who are innovative and actually for skills applications. So it's very critical to find the right balance between innovation and execution. And later we'll be working with the Austrian Space Agency, FTA, Australia, and also international startups. So that's my advice.
So thanks to the welcome to you. What is the Australian companies must know about India, Indian companies must know about Australia to enter these markets?
So when it comes to say companies in India, I've shared a few points, but I'll make one key point I think key things that I'm great. So highlight is that Australian companies get a little bit nervous when there's a reference to anything long term. The long term sounds like it could be turned. And they get very nervous about that, particularly if these companies who you're partnering with they've got typically quarterly investor meetings, half yearly financial statements to report against, so now the tremendous pressure. Private companies, yes, they might bring more capital, but they hold that pension that is the long term company. So one of the key things I always try and understand with companies from Australia around the world is how do you capture profits through money management? Just how long to actually be profitable. And what is often revealing is that often they're very profitable from about that performance setting view. So it's not entirely, I've seen that across manufacturing, I've seen that across various states, and I've seen that as well. So I think it's quite important to be able to speak in quite specific terms of what is the short term, what is the medium term, and what is the longer term. And in your Compendium, you speak to time frames. Those time frames are very important for where to be. That's one thing keeping. I think what you did not in Australia, I think the number one thing I'll say, and Andrew's better placed to should is that it always surprises me when I speak to companies around the world that have invested in Australia, and Australia is often in their top 5 market store. So if you look at a lot of your multinational, you're in multinationals, which is very, very involved. I think it's a very witness. See, but why a world-class product and service instead of making massive really one of the most profitable markets in the world, even though it's a small market. City really so the capacity and the willingness to pay. So those are the two criteria, you do separate things. You can have capacity to pay. You don't want to. Yeah. It's very tremendous so the political risk in Australia, where the payment concern is exceptionally well, many countries. So that's how we see it. A big focus for us, we just call it as I consume it. It's not really navigate political risk effect. We can spend a lot of time thinking about, infrastructure fund guarantees, thinking about political risk assurance. You don't have to spend time thinking policy certainty and regulatory certainty. And that's something that we get quite consistently feedback, even though.
So, kind of already don't let skepticism, anecdotal assumptions stop. Don't be manipulated led by business literacy, awareness of the market, and also getting this for us, it's 18 months of our time to come to this switch from like convention and let's shop a little bit, see what activities transportation. Little anecdotal mine as well, which is it's very big squash. Conditions getting down for meetings, no independent partnerships, and most importantly, do not fall for Spain. Thank you very much for joining us. I request to handle the United States. No problem. Felicitations. Look at the problem. Australia. Thank you very much. We now request Ambassador Anand Vadva for his concluding remarks. Ambassador Vadva is also the distinguished board member of Newland Global Group's advisory board and has a very acclaimed role in the Australia-India corridor. He's also the author of Australia Economic Strategy, a reciprocal report to India Economic Strategy 2035. Ambassador Vadva, please.
So, ladies and gentlemen, as we come towards the end of a fascinating session today, it's my privilege as a member of the advisory board of Newland Global Group to deliver this vote of thanks that I've been asked to do at what has been a fascinating launch for the Australia-India Business Case Studies Compendium, the second edition. So let me start by expressing deepest gratitude to everyone who made this compendium possible. And I believe this project is the outcome of 18 months of collaboration, contributions from across the corridor. Let me begin by acknowledging Newland Global Group's joint partner, the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Their rigor and the work of their research team, which is led by IIFT's management scholars, is integral to building the depth of this compendium. Thanks are due to Professor Rakesh Mohan Joshi, of course, Professor Preeti Tak, Professor Arunima, and their outstanding management scholars. To the 30 case study companies, quite a few of them are here today, including Zoho, Tanshu Australia, Auto Ingress, Circular Seed, Hexaware, HCL Tech, Sun Pure Extracts, FBE India, Wipro, Persistent Systems, Space Machine Company, Hanwha, Energy Exemplar, Power Ledger, Infravision, Sicona. Thank you for your time, energy, and the data that you invested in this work. And we are deeply grateful to you for taking the time to work through a 33-question questionnaire to sit with Newland Global Group for in-depth interviews. And your lessons have given this compendium the depth and the credibility. To the 30 institutional ecosystem and strategic partners across government, industry bodies, institutions, and research teams, thank you for the valuable inputs and the intellectual honesty you brought to every discussion. The strategic partners, including High Commission of India in Canberra, Investment New South Wales, Government of Tamil Nadu, HSBC, RSM Australia, University of Sydney, Kmart Anco Group, Business New South Wales, Government of Maharashtra, Fornax, Commonwealth Bank of Australia. Big thank you. Also, we are very grateful, of course, to His Excellency Mr. Philip Green, OAM, Australia's High Commissioner to India, who joined us today. His presence powerfully reinforces the significance of the Australia-India engagement at both the industry and institutional levels. We also extend our sincere thanks to the team at the Australian High Commission and the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade for their continued engagement and valued support of this project. We are deeply grateful to Ms. Petal Dhillon, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, and colleagues at the Commerce Ministry for their meaningful engagement, their guidance, and their continued support. We also sincerely acknowledge the support extended to the High Commission of India in Canberra and the Consulate General of India in Sydney, whose ongoing engagement has been instrumental in advancing this initiative. Thanks to Mukund, thank you very much, Head of South Asia at Austrade, and his team for joining us today and for contributing practical trade and investment insights to the discussion. We extend our sincere thanks to industry leaders, state government commissioners and their executives, NASCOM, CUTS, members of Federation of Indian Export Organization, EO, the Export Promotion Council for EOUs, and SEZs, Automotive Components Manufacturing Station of India, VETASIS, Confederation of Indian Industry, Service Export Promotion Council, the Indo-Australian Chamber of Commerce, as well as representatives from federal and state governments for being part of today's dialogue. And finally, to everyone who's present with us, thank you for joining us, for your continued support, and for the role that you each play in strengthening the Australia-India corridor. And we look forward to working with all of you in the months ahead. Again, on behalf of Newland Global Group, thank you once again to all our partners, to contributors, and to the guests. And I hope you enjoy reading this compendium. And more importantly, I hope it serves you well on your journey across the India-Australia corridor. Thank you. And after the vote of thanks, I believe, uh, I've been asked to invite you to join us for lunch and networking. Do you have a vote of thanks? Thank you.
I would request Dr. Preeti to come to the stage for a vote of thanks, please.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arunima. Ladies and gentlemen, in cricket, when India and Australia step onto the pitch, the air thickens with anticipation. It's fierce, it's competitive, and every run is hard earned. But today, we are not here to watch a contest. We are here to celebrate something far more powerful, collaboration. The case compendium pitch perfect and its launch captures this spirit where ideas, institutions, and industries come together, create knowledge that transcends boundaries. As we come close to today's program, it's my proud privilege to propose vote of thanks for this special occasion from IFT Delhi. At the outset, I extend my sincere gratitude to our chief guest and distinguished dignitaries for sparing their valuable time and for enriching the event with their insightful presence. I would also like to express our sincere thanks to industry partners, contributors, and collaborators whose real world experiences and thought leadership form the backbone of this compendium. This work truly reflects the spirit of collaboration between academia and industry that bridges the theory with practice and in the most meaningful way. My special gratitude to Professor Rakesh Mohan Joshi, Vice Chancellor IIFT, who proactively took the initiative to organize this launch, demonstrating exemplary leadership and a deep commitment to academic and research endeavors. I also thank Dipin and Natasha from NGG for collaborating with IIFT. My special appreciation also goes to our 40 MBA students who authored and the editors of this book, Professor Rakesh Mohan Joshi, Dipin, Natasha, and the entire academic team, whose rigorous effort, intellectual commitment, and attention to detail have made this compendium both relevant and impactful. My sincere appreciation to Sri Gaurav Gulati, Registrar IFT, and his team for their invaluable administrative support, which ensured the smooth planning and execution of this event. A word of thanks to our partners, sponsors, and institutional collaborators for their trust and support, and to the organizing team and colleagues whose behind the scene efforts ensured the seamless execution of today's event. Finally, I thank our faculty members, students, researchers, and all participants for being an engaged and enthusiastic audience. A special thanks to Dr. Arunima and Dr. Divya for making this event successful. With this, I once again thank everyone, and I would request you all to join us for the lunch in the atrium. Thank you. Uh, 1 second. Stay there.